Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, we're back on the hood for that 1950 Chevy truck, the 3100, and today we're going to get to sanding on the primer we shot the last time you saw this. So we're going to go ahead and block it out a little bit just to kind of flatten out the primer, and then we're going to get some guide coating done. But we also have some trouble areas around the back there where I had to feather edge the paint back from the edge because it was chipped so badly. So we're gonna have to do some hand sanding. I think it's gonna need some more primer. I don't think we can tackle it with just the one coat, but that's something we're gonna need to look at too. So let's jump on in here and take a look at some of the spots that are probably gonna give us some trouble, and then get to sanding on this thing. Okay, here's what I was talking about. So I don't know if you guys can tell, you probably can. So right here I had to feather edge the paint back all the way around on the whole edge because it was chipped back so badly. But right here it's probably the worst. So I could have tried to feather edge this back a little bit farther to make the transition smoother, but I decided to do it a lot shorter, and we'll just let the primer bring it back up, and then we'll sand the primer down on this side, and hopefully they'll meet in the middle. If not, we'll hit it again with a little more spot priming, and then until we get that all worked out. It goes up all the way around, and all this edge all the way around. We're going to have to do that. Also, we have to do where the center strip was, the molding, because as you guys recall, it was basically glued on here with all the coats of paint, and when I removed it and I tried to cut it, to release it, it still chipped the paint back on each side. So I DA'd that down and feather edged that. It's back a little bit farther, and I put a couple extra coats of primer right here on this strip area as well, so we could get a little more sanding done there. Hopefully get that flattened out without having to do any spot priming, but chances are we're going to have to spot prime it again. So let's go ahead and grab some sandpaper. We want to work these out before we move on to guide coating and trying to block out the rest of the hood. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a small block with some 120 on it just to kind of rough this down. The reason I'm using a small block is because I don't want 120 scratches way out here. We're going to hit this with like a 240 or 220. So I just want to hit this area where we're trying to feather out this and get this all worked out real nice. So I'll use a small block, and we're just going to come across here. I've got the guide coating right there, so I'm going to sand it a little bit, and then we're going to put some guide coating on there so you guys can see clearly what's going on. I can see, but I know it's not showing up on camera very well, so I'll go ahead and use the guide coating. So what I'm going to do is, see, this is right where the lip changes just to flat sheet metal, right here. So that's where the worst part of it was, with this hood being moved around and banged around all those years. It was really chipped out on the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come through here, and I'm going to kind of back it up with my hand as I push down, because I'm pushing down pretty good, not super hard, but I'm pushing down hard enough so I can get some good sanding done fairly quickly. All right, let's throw a little guide coating on there so you guys can see what's going on, and then we'll keep sanding on it. Okay, we got the guide coating on. Let's just make a pass. So I'm not holding it at an edge here trying to roll that. What I'm doing, I'm holding it flat against the sheet metal and just letting it bridge over that. So we can see right away, you guys can see where it's kind of wavy right there, and that's basically where the feather edging of the old paint was. So we need to keep sanding on this until we get that black line to disappear. And if blue starts showing up, hey, that's the way it goes. We'll just have to hit it again with some more primer and keep building this edge back up to till they kind of meet. All right, I'm going to keep sanding on this for a little while, and I'll bring you back and we'll see how we're doing. Okay, let's see how we're doing. So this is coming together really nice right through here. We have this little spot right there. Now that is guide coating right there, the little dark spot. It's not paint. And then when we come up here, you can see a big fat line of the guide coating. And then you got the gray that we sprayed, and then the blue. And there's a little gray on this side as well. So we've got like a low spot in between. I'm going to keep sanding on this. Now I'm not just focusing with that little block in this one little inch right here. I'm actually stepping over, I'll sand here and then I'll step over to make sure we just don't get a ridge line right there. So we have to be careful of that. So I'm going to keep sanding this to try to use some of this blue to get back down and just kind of feather that back out nicely. And then when we come up here, it starts getting better and better. And then right along here, it comes out really nice. It didn't take a lot of sanding. I guide coated it and just kept blocking it out little by little, and it's looking really good. We just have a little bit of guide coat just on the very edge and a few little chips. So I'm going to sand a little bit more, and then we're going to use finer sandpaper to roll this edge over. Remember, this is only single thickness sheet metal, and paint will stick to a nice round edge instead of a really sharp edge. So I want to make sure that's rounded over really nice. So when that color and clear hit it, we've got a nice smooth line right there. So I'm going to keep sanding and see if we can't tackle this right here. If it gets to be too much, then we're just going to have to resand all this and spot prime it to try to build this little strip right back up here. But that's the plan. We're just going to keep on working on this right here, and then I'll do the other side, and then I'll bring you back. Okay, let's see how this all turned out. So all through here, we're going to have to spot prime. Now that little spot right there, we're going to have to sand out, but up here, now I'm starting to get into the green, which was the original color, I believe, if not red underneath, but I'm starting to run out of paint here, and what's going to happen, it's going to start diving off, and it's just not going to look good. So what I need to do is sand the rest of this guide coat off. You see that little strip right there? That's guide coat. So I'll sand that off, clean it all up, and we'll spot prime that area. A couple of coats to help build that back up right on this edge, and then feather it back over here, and then that should take care of all that. So this is the worst area on the whole thing. Up here on top, it came out really nice, really nice. I've already used some 220 to round this corner over, and it came out really nice. It feels smooth, and the guide coating, I was able to sand it all the way, and it came out really good. Over here, pretty much the same thing. Just went through in a few spots, so that worked out really well. Over here, we kind of had a similar thing like on the other side, but it came all the way out. But I will spot prime this again. I will spot prime all the edges again anyways, because we sanded so heavily right there. When we block it out again, I want to make sure we have plenty of fill right there so we can transition everything together. So over here, where the strip goes down the middle, it came out really good. Of course, where we did the body work, there was no issues. And right on this side, it was really good. When that molding, you take the emblem off, that molding pops up. That's why there was no sticking of paint or buildup right there. But down right here, there was quite a bit. So I can actually feel that right there. And you see how it kind of fades away, ghosts away right here. That's what you want to see. When you see distinct lines right like that, you know you're in trouble. It should look like, that right there. So I can actually feel that line right there. So this is going to take another couple of coats of primer to get this straightened out, but the rest of it came out really good. Now we can move on to just sanding the whole thing, just to get the top sanded, smoothed out a little bit, and then go to some guide coat. There's no reason to go to guide coat right after, without sanding it, because this is just too rough. It's got orange peel on it. We want to hit the whole thing and then blow it off and then get some guide coating on it and get to sanding. So that'll be our next step. Okay guys, off camera I went ahead and sanded the whole hood, all the large areas with some 120 on a block. And the reason I did that is I was just trying to smooth out the primer so we can get some guide coating on it. So we're going to go over this whole thing with a larger block with some 240 on it. So I wanted to make sure I didn't have to overwork that 240 trying to smooth this out just to get some guide coating on it. So the 120, I did it lightly. I was only trying to remove roughness, orange peel, that kind of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and get this guide coated up real good, and I'll bring you back in a second once it's all done, and we'll start blocking it out. Okay guys, we got half the hood guide coated really nicely. I just try to do the large-ish areas that we want to work on right now. The curved areas down here we'll do with a different block. I'll get that a little bit later. But we just want to see where we're at overall on the hood here. So if this was going to be a show truck and this is just a driver, I have to keep reminding myself, we'd probably block this out with some 120, because the 120 allows you to float over it really nicely without pushing down at all. and really flatten this thing out. You're going to take off a lot of material, but that's the idea. That's what the polyester primer's for, is to fill all those little undulations and those little low spots and do that work for you. Then you would clean it off again and probably have to prime it again if you went through, and then you would start blocking with finer and finer grits until you got to perfection. This is just a driver, so we're going to jump right to 240, and that's what I have on here. It's just some peel and stick on a 12-inch door block. I've got my wire brush I use to keep the sandpaper clean, and we're just going to get after it here. Now I'm going to go ahead and go at angles, just like I always like to do, like you should do, because if you go in straight lines and try to go in a boxing motion, it's going to show up in your final paint job. And by going this direction, it allows me to work and find how I'm holding my block where it sands the most. So with these curves, you can find a spot, like if I just went straight over like this, it's hitting all the way, but if I turn it a little bit while I'm sanding, I'll start to notice that it's hitting a lot better. So as you go through the curves, you can manipulate your block to get it to, bridge over the whole thing so you're getting a good sand on it. So we're just going to go over this, and I'm not pushing down very hard, hardly at all. So what we want to do is, and we've got a few spots showing up right now, I'm going to show you here in a second. So I'm going to go through and just block this out. I'm going to go ahead and go the other way. And I'm going to blow this off a couple of times and keep the sandpaper clean. And then I'm going to bring it back, and then we'll see how it looks. So I'm going to focus on here. I don't know if you guys can tell, but we've got a low spot right there. And as you recall, that's where we had that little dip going on in the blue paint. So I'm going to keep at it, and I'll bring you back in a minute. Okay, guys, let's get a little progress report here. So the hood's coming out really nicely. I'm really happy the way everything's looking overall. Had a couple little surprises here on the side. Now, I didn't put a lot of primer here on the sides. I really didn't think it needed it. I just kind of hit it one good coat, and that was it. But we've got a low spot there, and we've got a low spot there. You can kind of see the orange peely shape of the primer there. So we got some blue popping through. I'm going to go ahead and keep blocking this out. I'm pretty confident we can get that out. A little more blue is going to start showing up, but that's fine. We're going to have to reprimer this anyways and then hit it again. So that's really, you can tell it's almost out. So we're close there. Up here on top, we knew we had a problem here. You guys remember that crescent-shaped kind of a low spot we had in here. It's still there. I can feel it, but it's starting to come out. You can tell it's starting to fade away over here. And I did lay down, specifically when I was priming, I put like 2 or 3 coats just in this crescent shape right here. So I'm confident we've got enough polyester primer on there to block out and get that smoothed out nice. And if we don't, we'll spot prime it and keep at it. And we had a little one over here that I wasn't aware of. We got a little low spot right there, a little dinger or something. So that looks like it's going to start coming out too. So I'm going to keep blocking on that. Now in the front, you guys are probably wondering, well, how do you block around all these curves? So if you just use a block, let's say we have this block here, and this is what I used, and you're sanding, and you only see like a nickel-sized area being sanded, but you got a big old wide block like this, you know you're not blocking it out right. So this is DuraBlock. You can use anything. I took this and I bent it. And you can bend these things and get them to the shape you want till it starts to conform, okay? And that's what I did with that one. You can use anything. You can use a redwood bender board. You can find anything in the home center that you can put sandpaper on, and you can bend and it'll keep that shape. Because what you're trying to do is bridge over all this while you sand. Can't use your hand because your fingers keep following everything they hit, right? But something like this, it's semi-rigid, and it'll do a great job for you. And this is what I used. I didn't actually use the sandpaper that's on here. I just grabbed a piece of 220 dry and folded it over and used that instead. So that's how you go about that. You can figure something out. There's boards out there that flex. There's all kinds of stuff, but you don't always have to buy it. You can make it yourself, just what you got laying around the house. So keep that in mind when you're sanding. This came out really nice. I'm going to keep at it for a little bit, and I'll bring you back, and we'll see if we can get that bad boy out right there. Okay, guys, just finishing up this. Let me blow this thing off real quick, and we'll take a hard look at it and see how it came out. Okay, this side is pretty much blocked out. I'm pretty happy with the way it's coming out. So this up front here where the speaker was, speaker dent, it's looking really good. Got a little dark spot right there, and that is some metal coming through, but we're gonna do a seal coat over the whole thing and sand it with some fine sandpaper, so I'm not worried about that. That'll come at a later date. All in all, it's looking really good. Got all down inside the rounds here with my round Durablock. We were able to sand out those two little low spots, so that's looking good. And I was blowing it off pretty well, and I found a couple of spots over here, so I had to stop, resand, and blow it off again. So we had a couple of waves over here took care of. That low spot came out. I'm pretty happy about that. And all in all, it's looking really good. We were able to get this one out. I had enough primer there, so it's looking really good. And even at 240 grit, you can see this polyester primer is really kind of shiny. So I've been looking up and down here, and it looks pretty good. I can't tell if I can see a wave here or not, but we'll find out later. But I think it's looking really good. I think we got that all sanded out. Off to the next side. I'm not going to show any of that. Remember we had some chips and a few little dingers over there, so hopefully it'll go a little bit smoother than this side. But I'm going to bust that out real quick, and I'll bring it back and we'll take a look at it. Okay, we are done blocking out this other half of the hood, and it didn't turn out quite as well as I had hoped. That's usually the case, isn't it? So it's actually the next day. I had started on that half, but the sun was out, and I've got 1,000 feet of pasture fence to put in, and I'm not done grading yet. So I jumped on the tractor and put 2 or 3 hours in on the tractor getting some grading done. So it's the next day. And you can see where I went through in a few spots here, no big deal. The front looks good. You remember we had some chips and stuff up here. We had that little repair right here. Now I'm blocking it out. Now I got a little shiner where the steel is starting to poke through right there. And if I hadn't finished the other side, I might try to tap that down a little bit and keep blocking. But it's very, very faint right here. And so what I'm going to do is I'll just sand that guide coat out, and we'll spot prime that area, get a good double coat, and then we can block it out again and get rid of that. Of course, we need to get some over here. Remember, we had that issue where I had to feather that out, so we'll get a good coat in there too, a couple of coats. So over here, we've got some waves, and this is the biggest problem on this side of the hood. So you can see kind of a low spot there. I had a few along here I was able to sand out and at least make them smaller. The emblem goes right here. I'm not super concerned about it, but I don't like the way this looks. So we'll go ahead and take care of this just like we had on the other side, and we'll sand all this guide coating off here and then spot prime it. So, and the same thing up here. We've got another little low spot. That's where I did all that sheet metal work, and I filled a little glazing in here, so we'll do that. But you're probably wondering, all right, Mark, you sand all that guide coating off, then what happens? You're going to lose your place. You won't know where to put your spot priming. Well, that's true. So what I do is sometimes I stick a little piece of tape on each spot, or lately I just take a picture with my phone, and then I just look at the phone and say, okay, that's where it was, that's where it was. And usually I'll sand these areas circular motion so I can kind of see it in the primer, and it kind of reminds me where it's at. So let me get these sanded up, get all this guide coating off, and I'll go around and get the groove down the middle with some Scotch-Brite and make sure everything's scuffed up really well. Just in case, you want to make sure everything's scuffed up, because when you're priming you may overshoot a little bit, and you want to make sure everything's prepped all the way around it just in case you get some spray on there. So let me get this taken care of. We'll mix up a little baby batch of primer, and then we'll get some spraying done. Okay guys, I got the hood pushed out to the edge of the shop. I don't want to cover anything up. The strainer's filling up the gun right now, so while we're waiting on that, I moved the center strip that we've stripped down to bare steel and got some etching primer on it the other day. So it's been brought out. We're going to get some primer on it right now. I sanded it with 400 grit and then scuffed the whole thing with purple Scotch-Brite inside and out, so it's ready to go. I just kind of kept it aside and wait until I had some more primer in the gun So we're going to take care of it today. Now, spot priming, we don't want to go and cover the rest of the whole hood again where we don't have to. All these other areas are perfectly fine, so we just don't want to add more material that we don't have to. It's wasteful, and then you got too much film thickness, right? We want to keep that as minimal as possible. So I'll go by and I'll do a double coat or triple coat on this bad one right here. This one right here, I know I need to get some extra material, and then we'll get some of these other areas spot prime that came through so we can block them out again, and then hopefully that will be it for spot priming, and then we can do a seal coat on it on another video. So let me grab the gun, the respirator, and we'll get to spot priming this thing and get some primer on this molding here. So on this one right here where we need to fill that center, what I'll do is I'll put it right where I want it, and then each time I put a coat I'll get a little bit bigger, because when we block it out we just don't want a little lump in the middle. We want to make sure it's plenty of material so we can block it out nicely. Okay, we're gonna let all that flash off real good. I will hit a little bit over all the blue spots just to hit them again, and we'll sand them lightly. It's not like we need to, but I want to cover them up just to make sure there's some sand scratches and stuff that need to be covered. So we're gonna let it flash off. I'm quite certain I got plenty in the gun. So we're gonna let it flash off a little bit, and I'm gonna make sure I get 2 coats on all the spots I really want before I move over and start putting some primer on the molding here. But it's looking really good. It's nice when it's all glossy like that before the solvent leaves it, so you can kind of tell how your work's going. Okay guys, it flashed off completely. You got to be patient and let it flash off. If you just pile it on, then that solvent's trapped underneath the next coat, and it's going to take that much longer. So you want to let the solvent leave and then get your primer, your next coat of primer on. So I'm going to go ahead and go around and hit all these spots again. I just checked the cup. I've got plenty of primer, so I'm not worried about it. And then we'll start hitting some of these other areas that I want to get a little bit more on, and then we can move over and get that molding done. All right, looks pretty good. All right, it looks good. Okay guys, spot priming is all done, and I'm quite confident we got plenty of primer on those areas to reblock them. We got to let this flash off. I'm going to roll it out in the sun, let it kick off, and then start outgassing and set up. But while we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and jump back on the tractor and try to get some grading done. And then we'll get right back on this thing and block all these areas out. Okay guys, I thought I'd show you real quick what I've been up to when I'm not in the shop. Trying to get all this graded out. The fence will be arriving pretty soon, the materials. This little project right here sure made my back sore. Just started off as grading it out, then throwing a few rocks in. Next thing you know, I'm grouting them in and pouring concrete. So it came out really nice. The fence will go bridge right across it. But we're getting pretty close. Got to get it done. Okay guys, I've been sanding off camera, and I've pretty much got everything done. We did most of the big works, but the spot priming did its job. We got rid of this low spot right here. The one over here we took care of, had to get into the blue a little bit to get rid of that one, but it's looking good, and all the other areas are looking good. All I really have left is this little area about where the emblem goes right here. So I'm going to go ahead and sand this up. Then I'll blow it off, I'll bring you back, and I'll show you where there's a few spots where some guide coating is on these edges right here. Just a really faint line, and what we're gonna do is just roll that over really nice. So let me finish this up, blow it off, and I'll bring you right back. Okay guys, I got you zoomed in really tight here, and you can see just the hint of the guide coating right there. So what I've got is I've got a semi-rigid block here, and I've got 400 grit on it. Now, when you do this kind of work, you want to go to a super fine sandpaper because it's so easy on these edges to sand through. So what we want to do is just roll this over really nice. So we're just going to kind of go back and forth, and then slowly turn over the corner, and I'm not even pushing down. I'm just sliding it back and forth. And as you can see, it's starting to disappear. This 400 grit will take it down pretty fast. This is a fresh piece, by the way. So just like that, it's coming out. I've got a little bit of hint of a little bit still right there. So we're just going to kind of keep going over it really lightly. And I'm going to do that to the whole hood all the way around, not just these sharp edges, but the other lipped edges around there as well. We already straightened those out really nice, but I want to get them sanded with the block so they're really, really smooth and nice. So I'm going to go finish this off. We'll blow it off. I'll bring you back. We'll take a look at it, and we'll call this one done. Okay, all blocked out. Feeling really good about this. I think it's going to look great once it's all done. Got all the spots taken care of. Okay guys, that pretty much wraps up this video on getting the hood off that 1950 Chevy truck all blocked out, smoothed out. I think when it's all done, it's going to look fantastic. I'm really happy to get this thing moving along. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Keep those comments coming, guys. It really helps promote the channel, and I really appreciate it, and I love interacting with all of you. We'll see you on the next one.